We're honored to have with us Laura Story. She's one of the three artists that make up the 3-in-1 tour, which will be coming to Syracuse on Saturday, March 16th at 7 p.m. at North Syracuse Baptist Church. Laura, thanks for taking a few minutes out of your day to talk with us.
Oh, thanks so much, Mike. We're so excited about coming to Syracuse.
Great. Well, many people obviously know your songs, but they may not know much about your musical background. How did your musical journey start?
Well, I grew up in the church and sang in some kids' choirs. Even I was not very good at the time, and so I quit singing and started playing in the orchestra at my elementary school. I think it was 4th grade. So I was 10 years old when I started playing string bass, and that's the big old one, and lugged that back and forth for probably about 10 years. Played up through high school and through college, and just did the classical route for a while, and also took some piano lessons as a kid, and then eventually joined a band as their bass player, and then played for a couple different bands as their bass player. And I don't really know how it happened, Mike, but at some point in time, God just kind of started pushing me towards the front of the stage and making me sing, which is a bit of a stretch, but I'm learning to enjoy it more. I'm also learning that, God He's so much more interested in He's not as interested in putting us doing something that we feel comfortable doing as much as He is leading us to a role where we feel dependent.
Right.
And that's kind of how I think about singing, and very grateful that I get to do what I do for a living.
Well, that's great. Well, your most well-known song right now is got to be Blessings. It's on the radio, it's online, and even, people in churches are playing that as a, one of those special music selections that they do. Mm-hmm. And it's a song that really connects with everyone because it captures the reality of life, sort of God's reality of life in a snapshot. What is the background behind the song? What led you to write that song?
Well, the song, it started as a journal entry as I was just processing through my husband walking through some health issues. He was diagnosed with a brain tumor about, I guess, almost 7 years ago. And he has experienced a lot of healing from that, but also there's some disabilities that he lives with on a daily basis with his vision and with his memory. And the song Blessings it was just written out of, trying to understand as a believer, why doesn't God always answer our prayers the way we want him to? And how can I still trust him to be the good God that he says that he is, even when he doesn't bring that healing that I'm praying for? And I wish I could tell you that I totally understand it now, but obviously I don't. But I have come to a place of recognizing that even though God doesn't always answer my prayers the way that I want him to, it doesn't mean that he's not a good God.
Right.
His word's very clear about sometimes he has a greater story in mind than just the story that I live in. And I'm learning so much about how my individual story fits into the context of his story that he's writing, and how he can use just about anything we walk through to bring himself glory if we're willing to really surrender our stories and say, God, this story may not be the one that I would have written for my life, but I'm going to trust you, and I'm going to see how you are going to use this to make much of yourself.
That's that's obviously something that we all try to make sense of, whenever we can. Well, the casual, quote-unquote casual listener might not know that you actually lead worship at Perimeter Church in Atlanta. And as any worship leader knows, it takes a lot of time to prepare to lead worship sort of on a week-to-week basis, regardless of the size of the congregation. How do you balance the touring, recording new albums with the role that you play down at Perimeter Church?
Oh, well, thanks for asking that. And I'm still working on it. I got up at 7 this morning and hung out with my sweet little daughter till about 9:30, and then I'm going to get to talk to some radio stations today about the tour, and then I go to the church and do a Bible study there during lunchtime, and then I have a meeting about Easter right after that, and then I leave for the tour right after that. And so it's it's trying to balance things and trying to put family first every time. And we actually have a ministry board that I started about 2 years ago that is a couple of pastors at my church, them and their wives, that look over my schedule and help me figure out how to love my family well in the midst of answering God's call for my life.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of family, last September you gave birth to your first child, Josephine Grace, right? How has that changed the dynamic of your family, of how your sort of daily routine goes?
Well, as anyone who has kids knows, it changes everything, but in such a delightful way. And I even wondered, whether the touring and stuff would just be too much with a little baby, but I've actually found the opposite. She brings so much joy to everything that we do, and even the traveling piece of it. She's a good little traveler. She doesn't seem to mind flying, and she loves sleeping in the bus. She sleeps so much better in the bus than she does in her crib. So it's actually been a neat thing to see, because I really believe that we should be doing ministry as a family. It's not just something that I do. It's something that God's called all of us to.
Yeah. Well, we get the chance of sort of looking in on your life every now and then on Facebook and seeing pictures of of your husband and your baby, and it's it's a real pleasure to be able to see that. I'm sure that many people who are worship leaders in their local churches, we always think that someday, hey, we might be the ones to record, a popular song or an album that'll just run up the charts. And you've obviously been in a situation where you were in bands before, you've led worship and released songs and albums, and have now, I've obviously been very, very successful. Did you always have aspirations to be a recording artist, or was that something that sort of just kind of developed?
Well, that's even kind of a funny story in and of itself. When I was in college, I think I did have those aspirations, and I almost signed a record deal when I was in my early 20s, but it ended up not working out, and I ended up at a church leading worship, and that's where I really fell in love with the church and realized that's no second-rate job. Being a church worship leader is it's a high calling, and I'd say higher calling in some ways than people that are just on the radio. not to downplay that at all, but I find so much joy getting to be with my church and pour into my parishioners and have them pour into my life as well. But it was funny because it seemed like it was really when I let go of that aspiration to be a touring artist that all of a sudden it just it's kind of a funny story. When I had started recording this album, and we had ended up ditching it. Indescribable was one of the songs that we started recording, and so Chris Tomlin came and started recording with the producer I was using, and they found Indescribable on the hard drive of the computer and thought, hey, let's sing this song. And so I had kind of given up on the whole thing and was really loving my role at the church when Chris recorded Indescribable, and that's kind of how I realized that God wasn't done with me yet, kind of on a national level. But also, I was thankful that it didn't happen before then, because at this point in time, I had such a strong commitment to the local church. Before I did sign the label deal that I ended up signing, I knew that I wanted it to be some sort of hybrid between touring nationally but serving locally. And that's what it's been for 7 years now, and I couldn't be happier about it.
Well, it seems it's definitely, there's been a lot of success that's been following you. You've had an album that won Inspirational Album of the Year, the Dove Award in 2009, an album that won the Pop and Contemporary Album of the Year this past year, a song that won Pop and Contemporary Recorded Song of the Year and Song of the Year this year, and also the Grammy for Best Contemporary Music Song. And, being in sort of this area of playing and performing music, how has this success impacted your relationship with God? How has it impacted your life and even your ministry?
Well, like I was saying about serving at the local church, that's something that really has always kept me grounded. Because having all these awards, sometimes I'll show up at churches and they're like, what kind of bottled water can I get you? But then I'll go home that next day, and I'm the one at my church saying, hey, what kind of bottled water can I get you? So it's nice having those two roles to balance out what I'm doing. But I'd say with the Lord, I don't think that God's that impressed with the big awards. But one thing I have seen is that the awards that have come, because it has crossed over to even some secular arenas, it's really served to get the song blessings out there and to get the message of God using broken things to glorify himself, to get that message out there. And any notoriety or attention that I've received, hopefully I've been able to steward that to bring greater attention to our Lord and Savior Jesus.
Well, that's great. Your humility, your passion, and your commitment to music and to serving really shows through both in the lyrics, in the way that you handle yourself and present yourself, and the albums that you put out. So we're selfishly very excited to have you come to Syracuse, and you'll be here with Mandisa and Brandon Heath again on Saturday, March 16th at 7 p.m. at North Syracuse Baptist Church. Just before we go, how can people follow you online? Are there Facebook, Twitter? What are the ways that people can follow you?
Yes, laurastorymusic.com, or connect with me on Facebook or Twitter, any of that kind of stuff. If you want to see a lot of adorable baby pictures, follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Facebook.
All right. Well,
I can promise you, I am addicted to posting baby pictures of little Josie. I'm having a fun time with that.
Well, as you're listening to this conversation with Laura, we'll have all the links to her social media online, so feel free to click through to those. Again, we'll see you in just a few weeks here. Hope you have a good beginning of the tour, and when you get here, you'll be all warmed up, and we'll be excited to see you.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you guys so much for having us.
All right. Thank you very much, Laura.